Hello, today's lecture is about relational development, how we develop relationships, maintain them, and how they deteriorate. Today I'll be talking about Mark Knapp, who is a communication theorist who developed a model that includes 10 stages. And today I'll be talking about the 10 stages, how they escalate, and how things come together, and how we maintain our relationships, and how they can deteriorate and terminate. So to begin, I want to give you a little background about Mark Knapp. He teaches communication studies and was well known in the field of nonverbal communication and how relationships develop. And through this information and through this study, he came up with 10 stages. And so it's called Knapp's stages of relationships or relational maintenance. So I want to start off with the first stage, and this is initiating. And this is when we first become aware of somebody. And we often become aware of somebody through the nonverbal communication, their dress, their attire, how they interact with other people, and we become aware of that person. And we form a first impression. Do we want to get to know this person? Do I want to know more about them? Experimenting is once we've had a formal introduction and we get to know somebody on a surface level, we go up a stage and we go to experimenting. This is where maybe we talk about some surface issues, such as, we've had beautiful weather this past week. What do you think of the Seahawks? Do you think they're going to go to the Super Bowl this year? We talk about things that really aren't personal to us. And we find out a little bit more. Experimenting can move on up to intensifying. This is where we learn each other's hobbies, our interests, and we decide, do I want to be friends with this person? Do I want to get to know them? Do I want to invest some time? One thing I want to clarify here, that with the stages, immediately we can go across here like a plank and go to avoiding and terminating. That to develop our relationships, we don't have to go through all of these stages. We can just walk on over here, avoid or terminate. After things become intense, or we get to know each other through intensifying, we go up to integrating. And integrating is where we start spending more time with the people that we're developing relationships with. Maybe we decide to hang out at each other's homes, or maybe I introduce my friend to some of my other friends and we become a group of friends, or I get to meet their family members, or I'm invited over for holiday dinners. So we start integrating, and that person becomes known to others as well. The next stage that we come up to is bonding. And bonding is where our relationship is well known and we declare our status, such as getting married, or we're officially dating, or a commitment to one another. So in through this stage is the relational maintenance, and this side over here is when we're coming together. So I'm going to write coming together. And coming together is building and developing our relationship. And in through here, we're maintaining. And we want to keep our relationship healthy, alive, and fresh. But over here is where our relationships go, but it doesn't have to be a negative. And this side is coming apart. So I'm going to write coming apart over here. I would say about right here it's coming apart. And let me explain why. Differentiating is when we in a relationship and friendship, we start developing different hobbies. Maybe I decide to learn how to knit, where my friend wants to learn how to make pottery vases. We still are developing our own interest, and we have some autonomy. The relational dialectic is we still are learning things about each other, but we're also taking time for ourselves to develop our own interest and connect with others' relationships as well. And then we come down to circumscribing, and this is where our relationship can get a little tricky. This is where our friendships and relationships, we know it's best not to talk about certain issues because it might upset the person. An example would be if I talk to a family member about why they should exercise, the health benefits. It might provoke a defensive response, and I know from past experiences or from talking that might be upsetting to the person. So this is where we kind of come up with some boundaries, some unwritten rules on how to relate and how to interact without maybe causing potential conflicts or causing interruptions and disruptions. So from circumscribing, because we know we want to be sensitive and not provoke the other person, and we know that we want to, maybe we're walking on eggshells and we're being extra careful, we also can risk going into stagnation. And this is where things become the same. This is where the relational dialectic goes from we crave things to be predictable in our relationships and we can count on it, but we also want some excitement and some newness brought into our relationships. And so stagnating is just that. If you were to look at a pond of water that's stagnant, it doesn't move, things are stuck, and it feels like same old thing. And so the risk when there's stagnation is we tend to avoid the person. We find out that, you know, maybe that person's not as exciting as what they used to be. I'm bored. I know exactly what they're going to talk about. They're going to want to go see us the movies and then have dinner, or I know that they're going to want to watch the game and then do nothing afterwards. So I tend to avoid that person. An example would be is if you start screening your calls. Someone calls your cell phone or your mobile number and you silence the phone, or you just don't respond. And after a while, the person realizes, oh, maybe they're avoiding me. And then things can fall apart. And then the last stage is terminating. This can be done where the person actually says, I want to break up with you. I don't think this relationship is working out. Let's get a divorce. Or, you know, we're just not compatible anymore. It's not you, it's me. So it's that type of rationale and reasoning. With terminating, it also can just go away quietly. It might be because I've been avoiding the person. I never really have to have a conversation and say, well, you know, we're over, we're done. It just kind of fades off. And we could, based on our interactions and not having to interact with somebody, we kind of come to that conclusion naturally, because there hasn't been any interaction or conversation or discussion about what's the quality of our relationship. Are we coming together and building up, or are we coming apart? And it's possible to experience some of this and then go back to bonding. What I want to really emphasize is that you don't have to go in stair steps and stay at that level. You can also walk down the stairs, or you can go back up to the platform and stay in relational maintenance. But it's becoming aware of what builds our relationships, what brings our relationships down so that we're coming apart. This area here, differentiating and circumscribing, even though it's on the coming apart column, it doesn't have to be detrimental to the relationships. Having conversations and open communication are opportunities to talk about. So how are we alike? How are we suited? Are we compatible? You have your strengths, I have my strengths, and that's really what makes the relationship rich, and it makes it interesting and unique. To have a relationship with someone who always agrees with you or is exactly like you might make you stagnant with that person because you know exactly what to expect. And so we're counting on these relationships to add more depth and more value to our lives. And so Mark Knapp came up with these 10 stages: initiating, experimenting, intensifying, integrating, and bonding. And then over here we have coming apart, differentiating, circumscribing, stagnating, avoiding, and terminating. And so as you enter into relationships, I want you to think about what's your first impression? What drew you to this person? What do you like to do? What do you think makes you interesting to others? Intensifying, integrating, and bonding. And then in a relationship, do you have time for, or do you make yourself autonomous within the relationship? So you're connected, but you also have some movement and freedom to be yourself within the relationship. And then stagnating, avoiding, and terminating. So these relationships can be for coworkers, if you start a new job, classmates, family, friends, romantic, non-romantic. So I want you to think of the overall structure and the construct of relational maintenance, and know that Mark Knapp came up with these 10, and it's always a lot of fun to talk about it because we can look at our own relationships and go, oh, okay, I remember when you and I initiated. And then remember when we were integrating and we used to hang out all the time together. But now that we're both in school and we're working full time, we're kind of over here where we have less time to devote to the relationship and friendship. So that's Mark Knapp's stages of relationships. And I want you to look at your own relationships and through this lens and ask yourself, where am I in my key relationships in reference to the different stages? Thank you.